Hey guys, welcome. Today's topic is creating custom connectors in Power Platform. We will look at 3 ways to create your custom connectors. The first one would be to build it from scratch. Second one is using Postman Collection. And the third one is to use Open API file. So let's get started. The reason you need custom connector is to provide additional data or perform any actions that cannot be performed using out-of-the-box connectors. You can think of it as a wrapper to your existing web API for communicating with Canvas apps in Power Platform. First thing you need is an existing web API, and that web API can be deployed wherever you want. Mine is currently hosted in Azure. So this is my web API. It's a superhero web API which has a post message, and it takes a request, and the request looks at the it either takes in the ID or the name, and then based on whatever is supplied, it would look for the superhero based on the name and then give a response back with some statistics. So this is a response back from my web API, which would have the name, the power stats, URL, and some stats around the superhero, right? So that's what my web API does. Now, if we go to Azure, and this is my Azure hosted API. So it's an API app. It's hosted on this particular URL. So let's go and test our web API first. So to test it, I'm going to use Postman. So if I go to Postman, I can see that my URL is here. I have not given any parameters. My authorization is currently it's open-ended. There's no authorization needed. And then in the body, I'm providing the name as Superman, and I'm gonna send it. And let's look at the body, and that's the result that I get. So I'm getting the ID, name, URL, intelligence, and strength, and some other power stats. And this proves that my API is working. Okay. So now let's go and configure this API in our Power Platform. So to do that, first, you will be on your home page. You have to make sure that you're in the right environment. Once you have determined that you're in the right environment, you can go to custom connectors over here under data. So if you expand data, you can go to custom connectors, and inside custom connectors, you can click on new connector, and you can start from scratch using this create from blank. And once you do this custom connector from blank, you would be asked for a name. So I'm gonna do superhero from scratch. Okay. So now once you have given the name and clicked OK, you will be taken to this connector configuration screen where you have 4 steps. So first is your general information, like you can provide a background color, so you can give like 007E45, that's your color, and then after that you can provide an icon, whatever you want, and then you can provide the description over here. And now, so I can just provide my host name. So I can go to Azure, I can copy this URL and provide it in the host name. But now I have to remove HTTPS because I'm already providing the scheme here, whether it is HTTPS or whether it is HTTP. So I'm going to remove this, and we just need to use the domain. That's it. If you have like /API / whatever the route is, you don't have to provide the routes. Here you just have to provide the host. Okay. And then here you can provide the base URL if all of your APIs is going to have let's say xyz.com /API, then you can provide that API over here, which means all your requests would have that API as postfixed to your host. Okay. So once you have defined your general information, we need to go to second step, which is the security step. So in the security step, you can configure your basic authentication, or if you're providing this information through a API key, or if you're using OAuth. For demo purposes, I've kept it simple and I'm only using no authentication. So I'm going to choose no authentication, and then I need to go to the definition. Now, because we are creating this from scratch, we have to define all the actions, all the references, all the policies that our API is using. And to do that, first you have to click this new action button over here. And then in the summary, you can provide a summary of what your action is gonna do. An action is nothing but your it's your method, right? So in my case, it's gonna be getting the superheroes information. So I'm gonna say get superhero info, and in the description I can write a lengthy description where it would specify what kind of information is expected from this particular action. So retrieves retrieves all the superhero power stats with URL. Okay, and then the operation ID has to be a unique string without any space in them or any special characters. So this is kind of your method name. So my method name is going to be get superhero info. That's going to be my operation ID. Now in the visibility, you can provide the visibility as advanced, internal, or important. Now if you specify internal, then it's going to be hidden when the users are going to use your custom connectors. If it's going to be, if you mark it as important, then when you are using this in the Power Automate flow, then you can see this as listed as the important, or the first method is going to be shown would be get superhero info. Advanced is, it's not available in the first few list of methods, but then you have to expand or click on more, and then you would get this particular method. And none is where the system would define how to show it, right? I would keep it as none because my custom connector is only gonna use one single action, so it would always show up whenever I'm trying to use it. So I'm gonna keep it as none. Now we have to define our requests and responses. So in the request, we have an option to import it from a sample. So let's go and click on import from sample. Now here is where you have to first provide what kind of request it is. Is it a get request, post, put, what it is, right? And all this information is you can easily get it if you're using Postman. So in the Postman, I'm using post, so I go here and I'll select post. Then I'm going to select my URL. So I can just go to my Postman, copy it, and then paste it over here. Then I can keep the headers as is, because in the headers, the content type, it would automatically detect the content type. But if I have any special headers, like if I'm using I'm passing in the passwords in the headers or something like that, or base encoded passwords, and then I can certainly go into the headers and then just copy the header name and the header value, and then I can provide those over here. Okay, in my case, I don't have to provide any headers because I'm not using any special headers, but I'm using body. So I'm going to copy the body, and this is a sample body. It doesn't have to be like a generic body. You just have, or it doesn't have to be the type, object type, but you just have to provide a sample body, and then it would automatically detect your request types and what it is expecting. So once you do import, it's going to show you, okay, so it's going to show me the URL over here, and then it's going to show me the body over here. If you had any headers, it would show you the headers over here as well. Now if you go inside the body, you click on edit, you can see that it automatically detected that inside the body you have a name as a parameter or one of the attribute of JSON, and whether it is required or not, you can select it over here, and in my case it's going to be yes. And yeah, so that's my configuration for my request. Now let's configure the response body. So now here it's where it gets little tricky, because the default response is already added, but you have to configure your response. And the way we did it in request, we just import it from sample, but there could be several responses. There could be a 200 response, there could be 503 response, or 500 or 400 responses. So response codes could vary. So when you click on, say, add default response, so when you click on this default, you actually are taken to the configuration page of that particular default response. And again, same thing in that default response, you can just take the response from your Postman and say import from sample, and you can provide your headers here, again similar to what we did for request, and provide your body here and then say import. Now once you do import, you can see that body has compact and durability ID and all other stuff. Now by default it would take whatever name is in the JSON, but then if let's say you want to change the name, like if I don't want to use URL here, I want to change this URL to something else, then I can go in and edit it and then say, okay, I want to call this as image URL instead of just URL. And I'm gonna put in the same description here, and then that's it, right? So now whenever my users would be trying to use this connectors, they would see image URL instead of the URL, which is the expected attribute on the JSON file. So this particular definition is mapping your friendly names with your required names. Okay, so we have defined our request, we have defined our response. So now let's go and test it. But before we test it, it's going to tell us that we have to create the connector. So we'll create the connector first, and there you go. So now you can see that it was created, and then now it shows you the test screen. But to test the screen, you first need to create a connection, and because it's a new connector, you won't have a connection. So let's go and create a new connection. But once you do this, you would be taken to the connection screen instead of the application just staying on this screen. So if I click on create, once the connection is ready, it would take me to this connection screen, and you can see that the superhero from scratch connection is present over here, okay, which was created 1 second ago. But then we have to go back to custom connectors because we want to test our connector, right? So superhero from scratch, I'm gonna go and edit it, and I'll directly go to the test screen, and it automatically detects the connection because there's only one connection. If you had multiple connections, you can actually select it from this list. And then in the operations, as you can see, the request had one single attribute. So it's asking for that attribute as name, and then I'm going to supply as Batman and say test operation. And then this is my response, which is 200, and then it gives me the body. And that's how you create a custom connector from scratch. Pretty straightforward, right? Let's look at the second way of creating custom connectors, and that is using Postman. Once you click on new custom connector, you have several options, and one of the option is to use Postman Collection. If you click on import a Postman Collection option, you would see that the application is asking you for a connector name and a Postman Collection file, and it's asking you for a specific Postman Collection version 1 file. So let's go to the Postman and then see how we can create this collection file. So Postman has several options, and one of the option or feature is creating a collection. And collection is nothing but group of all APIs in one single folder, right? So you can think of collections as a folder, and you can create a collection by clicking on new collection option here. And when you click on new collection, you will be given an option to provide your name. You can also provide your description, and this description can be provided in a markdown file if you want. Then you provide your authorization. In my case, it's no auth, but you can certainly pick from multiple options that are available in the Postman. You can configure your tests, and you can, this is the important feature that I would like to highlight, is you can use variables, and you can give your variable name. You can provide an initial value, and then once you have created your collection, you just click on create button. Now let's see, how do we add an API into the collection? It's pretty easy. You click on a new tab, you provide the URL, you provide the method, if it's post, get, whatever it is, you provide the authorization, parameters, headers, body, and everything else. In my case, I'm going to provide the body. Okay, and then you can do send, which gives you the response. This particular tab can be saved in a specific collection. So to do that, you have to go on this save, and either you can click on save, and you can provide your request name. So superhero demo, provide your description, and then here is where you would select your collection. And I've selected superhero API custom connector, which is one of my collection, which is specified here, and then I can just add it to that collection. Okay, I'm not going to do that because I've already created a collection and I've already added my request to that collection, so I don't want to create duplicates. So just let's go and look at that specific collection. In this collection, superhero API custom connector, I have this API called a superhero info, which is exactly this one. And if you click on this three dots where you see more actions, you'll get an option to export this particular collection. And when you click on export, you will see that collection version 1 is deprecated, and there's a new collection version called as 2.1, but the Power App only needs collection version 1. It doesn't work with version 2 or version 2.1. So even if it is deprecated, right now Power Apps is only accepting collection version 1. So you click on export, and then it would provide you with a file. Now let's go to Power Platform, and let's provide the connector name. So superhero Postman. Now let's use the exported file, and then this is the exported file that I had from Postman Collection. So I'm going to select this file and then say open and continue. What the application would do is it would read the Postman Collection, it would read the description, it would read the host names and all the definitions that are available in the collection would show up here. So the description is the name of the collection, your host name is this one, and then in your security you would have no authentication, and in your definition you would have superhero info, which is the name of the API that you gave when you saved your API in a collection. And you can certainly change this information. So you can certainly change the operation ID, your descriptions, your summary. The cool thing is it automatically recognized what your URL is and what your body is going to look like. So if you go into the body, you would see that body is marked as required, and it also has name, which is what we supplied in our API request on Postman, right? And also we don't have to provide the response. The response is automatically configured for you, but here's the caveat: the response is in the form of the JSON output, and if you keep it the way it is right now, then you would get a string of instead of getting a JSON response where we had ID, URL, and all other power stats of the superhero. Instead of having those separated out, you would get one single string. So you don't want that to happen, right? So we have to fix this. So to fix it is, instead of using the default response from Postman, I would recommend you to import it from a sample. So from a Postman, you just copy the response and do an import of the sample, and that would provide you with all the attributes from the JSON as a body parameter or a body payload. And that's how you would create your connector using Postman. I can create, and as we did it with the previous one, we would again go and test this connector and create a new connection. Same process as we did earlier. And go and test it. Provide a name as Batman, and let's test the operation. And here we get status 200, and then we get the body, whatever we want, right? So that's how we create the custom connector using Postman. The last option that we're going to look today is creating the custom connector using OpenAPI file. Now, to use OpenAPI file, your API should provide with an OpenAPI file definition. And if your API is hosted in Azure, then Azure provides an easy mechanism to provide that kind of files. So let's go to Azure and then see how we can do that. So here I have my API and my URL, and it's running, right? But in the API configurations, in the left blade, you would see an option called as API management. So if under API section, you would see API management. Now, API management is what gives you the ability to manage, secure, and publish your APIs in different formats. So let's go and create a new API management. So I'm going to provide my API management name. I'm going to select my subscription, my resource group, locations, and my organization name. My administration email, my pricing tier, and then if I want to enable application insights, then I can select application insights. Now, if you have selected a consumption tier, it may take a while for the API management to get created and get linked to your API. So you would see that message that if there's a consumption tier, then it would take about half an hour. For consumption tier, it's going to take a few minutes, but for any other, it's going to take up to a half an hour for this to get created. So now once your API management is created, you would see this message where it says your app is now linked to the API management instance, and it would provide the instance name. Now, and you can go to the API management by using this button. So let's go to the API management service, and then in the API management service, you can go to API. And inside this API, you would see that there are new APIs, and you are on the Add API screen. Now, if the API was already linked and added, you would have seen the API name here. But as we are not able to see our API here, we are just going to go and add it. Now the API is hosted on an app service. So I'm going to select this API option. So I'm going to select my app service, and then here is where I can select my app. So I'm going to do browse, and I'm going to select my app, which is my Maverick Superheroes. Select. It would show me the display name, my name, and the API URL suffix if I want any. And I'm going to create. Now this added the API under my API management service. And as you can see, it added a default set of operations. You can customize all these operations to your needs. In my case, the only operation that my API is going to provide is the post message. So I don't need any other operations. I'm just going to go and delete all the operations that are available here. And that's it. Now I only have one operation called post. And I have to configure this operation in a way that my open API file is correctly configured. So my root domain has superhero in its root, right? So I'm going to go and fix that first. I'm going to do /superhero. Okay. And this is my front end. And then I'm going to configure my header. So if my API is always going to ask for certain headers, in my case, I'm going to do content type. And my content type is always going to be application JSON, right? And then I can configure my requests here. So I'm going to do request, and then how my request is going to look like. Now, when I'm adding a representation, I type in application and JSON. Right? So it's going to be my application JSON is going to be my definition for my request, and I can provide the sample here. So I'm going to go to my Postman again to capture my request and provide the sample here. But if I provide the sample here, I am only providing the sample on one single operation. If you want to use your sample, and if the sample is used across several different API operations, then you might want to create a definition. So this is where I would create my definition. So I can say create new definition, say superhero response. I'll provide my sample JSON, and it creates a payload based on my sample JSON. And I say create definition, and I just provide my definition over here. Yeah. Then I need to also specify my response. So add a response, and what type of response am I expecting from this particular operation? And I'm expecting 200 OK response. So I select 200 OK response. I have to give the name. So I'm going to do response, or just do response. And then here, same thing again, I have to provide a representation of my response, right? So here I'm going to type application JSON, and I'm going to provide my definition. Again, I go back to my Postman, select the response, copy it, and then back here I create a new definition. Oh, I created a wrong definition. So in the request I actually provided response. Okay, I'm gonna fix it. Okay, so I'm gonna save this for now, and I'm gonna go to definitions, and definitions you can go from here, and then you can rename this to request. Let's save it. So now it's request. So let's go back to operations, and inside the operations you can go to your post operation, and in the request now the definition is request, right? Coming back to response, let's configure our 200 OK response because we left it midterm, right? And then let's just complete that definition. So on 200 OK, we provided content type as application JSON, and now we provide the new definition for the response. Yeah, and then it creates a payload for us, and then we say create definition. So now we have created two definitions, one for request called as sh request, and then one for response called as sh response. I'm not going to provide any headers on my response. Okay, and then I'm going to save it. Now my front end tells me that I have my post operation as my domain / superhero. I have to provide a content type. My response is going to be 200, and then I have two definitions, one for request, one for response. If you have any kind of policies, then you can add inbound policies or outbound policies, and you can add few other stuff in the back end if you want. Now in the settings, you define your URL scheme. You also define whether the subscription is required or not, and then you also provide your user authorization, and then you can test it from here itself. So if you go to test, you would see that the host name is auto populated, the headers is auto populated, and then the request body is a sample request body is provided to you. And then you just have to hit send, and then it would provide you with the response. And there you go. HTTP response is message 200 OK, and then it provided you with the response. Now once you have tested your HTTP requests and response, and you're comfortable with all your operations and are ready with the API file, the way you create a file is click on these three dots and then say export. And once you click on export, you will be provided with several options. One of the option is to directly integrate the Power Apps, the configuration to a custom connector, and you can directly create a custom connector from here itself. But let's say your domain, your Azure tenant and your Power Apps tenant are not same, which is the case in my scenario as well. So my Azure directory is not linked to my Power Platform tenant, and both are in different tenants. So for that, I'm going to export version 2. Do not use version 3 because Power Apps, Power Platform is not accepting version 3 file. So export a version 2 file of OpenAPI. Okay, and then that would be a JSON file as well. So now once you have downloaded the file, let's head back to our custom connector screen, and then click on new custom connector, and then open API file. And now you provide the name of the connector. So superhero open API. And then now you import the open API file that you just downloaded and say continue. And like we did for Postman connectors and for the connectors from scratch, we can provide the icon color, descriptions and whatnot. And this gets auto-populated based on the open API file. So we don't have to provide any more details. So let's go to security. And the security, if you have checked the subscription key, then this would auto-populate, but we don't want it, so we can always change this while configuring the connector. So we are going to select no authentication, and then it takes in the summary, the descriptions, whatever was provided in the on the API management configuration, but then it just takes a GUID. But the cool thing is, as we had provided definitions it also provided the body. So if you go into the body, it provided us with the name. Is required is marked as no, but we can mark it as yes, and then the body has name on it. If you go to response is 200, and then there's a content type, so we have to provide the content type here as application JSON of type string, and then the body automatically showed you the payload, the required payload. When we were using Postman Collection, it was not able to parse that body payload out, but then when you are using API management, open API file definition, it is able to parse out the body payload. Okay, so we go back, and then let's change this operation because this is not what we want. So superhero get superhero info. Okay, and let's see, all the validations succeeded. I don't know why it's still showing me the warning sign, but let's go and do a create. Okay, and similar to all the other operations that we did, we have to test this out, and for testing it we need to create a new connection. Open API, and then we go to the test operation, provide the content, which is going to be application JSON, provide the name as Batman, and test the operation. Oh, we got the error, access denied due to missing subscription key. Yes, so let's go back to the API definition. Settings, and the subscription key was made as required. So we have to make sure that the subscription is depending on how you're configuring your API. If your API is not requiring a subscription, you disable this, save it. So going back, let's do the test operation again, and there you go. Now you get 200 success response, and then this is the response. Say close, and that's it. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to follow me on social media. If you like the video, hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. If you have any suggestion, then leave a comment below.